Good day, my name is Liangyun Huang, and in this video presentation I wish to outline my plans to improve community-school relationships through including and integrating Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives across the curriculum. As a teacher seeking to teach the full Australian history as part of humanities and social sciences at a primary school level at our school, which is on the land of the Wurundjeri people, I plan to develop my pedagogical plans with inspiration from the Browning the curriculum approach, in which the current education system, which is dominated by European supremacist views, is systematically challenged through including Indigenous Australian perspectives and privileging Indigenous Australian voices. This means informing and providing students with the full history of Indigenous Australian peoples through material created by Indigenous Australians themselves, as well as through a local lens relevant to students here in Australia, Victoria. So let me elaborate on this. My approaches include Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives across the curriculum, with focus on following the advice and using the educational materials developed and provided by local Indigenous Australian education professionals and communities themselves. Here in the state of Victoria, the Victorian Aboriginal Education Association has created extremely valuable material and resources such as the Koori Cultural Calendar, as well as the Protocol Guide for educators at early childhood, primary and secondary levels. I plan to fully utilize these in my teaching activities as well as curriculum planning. I believe the well-being and safety of Indigenous Australian students in the school can only be ensured when they feel their voices are heard and included. One of the best ways to ensure this is to work with and through Indigenous educators. The Victorian Education Department has Koori Education Engagement Support Officers, KESOs, in each region of the state, which corresponds to the local Indigenous nation country, which schools can contact and guide and seek guidance. Another key aspect is to hire local Indigenous educators who have the best knowledge of Indigenous students and are in the best capacity to transmit knowledge, as well as connect and speak to them. I believe that working with local Indigenous educators, education organizations, such as the VAEII, and qualified professionals, such as KESOs, are the best way to provide a culturally inclusive learning environment for Indigenous students without othering them. This is key for Indigenous students, for only when their cultures and perspectives are fully represented and included instead of being relegated in a corner of the classroom, and when local Indigenous cultures and significant dates are recognized, will they feel reflected and that the school is a space where they can see their own identity develop instead of being assimilated in a monocultural oppressive space, which has been the reality for way too long in Victorian and Australian classrooms. This will be beneficial for both the Indigenous and non-Indigenous students of the school. Through learning and understanding localized knowledge about local Indigenous history and diversity, as well as interacting with education material relevant to the land that they are living on, non-Indigenous students can remove any biases and misunderstandings towards their Indigenous counterparts, have better appreciation of culture and history of Indigenous peoples, and only with these foundations in place can reconciliation be possible. Here I'll provide a hypothetical example of how my plan can work towards closing the gap between Indigenous and non-Indigenous students at the school. Through utilizing resources provided by the VAEAI, students can learn about the history of Coranduk, the Indigenous Mission Reserve near Healesville for the local Wurundjeri people, through marking the date that it was established, 30 June, watching the third episode of the documentary First Australians, as well as organizing both Indigenous and non-Indigenous students on a field trip to the Coranduk site, accompanied by Indigenous educators or with the guidance of knowledgeable Indigenous elders at the site, so that the full Indigenous perspective can be given and taught to students. You must remember that closing the gap goes both ways. We want to improve educational outcomes for both Indigenous and non-Indigenous students. And non-Indigenous students currently have huge gaps in understanding the culture and perspectives of their Indigenous counterparts. I hope that this video presentation clearly outlines my plan, and thank you for watching.